Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar on interview preparation. My name is Cameron Yunus. I'm the admissions tutor at Downing College. I can see the participation numbers are still kind of clicking up. While they stabilize, I thought I could just do a quick intro. So the whole idea of today is really to give you an opportunity to find out about what provisions we have in place for doing interviews. I think the numbers are now stabilizing near 400, but okay. But just to kind of go over what the idea of today is going to be. We're going to give you an overview of interviews, what's involved, what to expect, what we're looking for, just to kind of remind people about those sorts of things. We'll also be outlining how we're going to be doing things this year. As you all are aware, all the undergraduate admissions interviews are online this year. So we'll be talking a little bit about the provisions we put in place for that. We're also going to hopefully be able to explain to you what to expect at the interview today and how to prepare for your interviews, and generally try and give you some tips and advice about this. And at the end, hopefully we're going to have a Q&A session. So with regards to the Q&A session, you will notice that there's a question and answer feature on Zoom on your probably on your menu bar at the bottom. Please feel free to use that Q&A box to post any questions that you have. And we'll try and make sure we can answer as many questions as we go along. The other thing, just to kind of point out, this webinar is to provide you some general advice about the admissions interview process and what to expect. We won't be able to go into specifics about individual subject interviews, but we will provide you some information and point you in the right direction to some resources which are available online, which should be able to give you some more information about particular subject interviews and what to expect of them. All right, so basically an overview of what interviews are all about. So many of you are probably very familiar with this, but just to kind of summarize this, as part of the admissions process at Cambridge University, we carry out undergraduate admissions. Now, this is one of the key parts of the admissions process, but it's not the only part in the admissions process. We look at a number of different things when we're evaluating applications. We'll be looking at your performance so far, how you've done academically. We'll be looking at your school reference. We'll be looking at your personal statement. We'll be looking at any submitted work that you have handed in as part of your application. We'll be looking at how you performed in any kind of pre-interview admissions assessment that you may have had to sit for your subject area. So, you know, there are a number of things, but interviews is one of the other processes that we also look at, and we use all of this information together collectively to make decisions about our applications and who should be given an offer to come and study at Downing College. So depending on which subject you've applied for, you may have one or two interviews. Typically, normally when we do interviews, when we used to do them in person, most subjects would have two subject interviews. But because we've had to adapt our process to do things online, and the interviews are now taking place via Zoom, in the case for Downing College, we have reviewed on a subject by subject basis to see how we can adapt our admissions interview process to make sure we can give the best opportunity for the candidate to perform at their interview. And in some cases, depending on the subject, we've decided that we're going to run one interview, but run it for slightly longer, so give the candidate more opportunity to settle in and go through the whole interview discussion. And in some subjects, we've been able to keep the two interviews for the subject interviews to run in sort of in series or in parallel. So really, depending on the subject that you applied for, you may find that in your letter of details for your interview arrangements, you will find that you have one interview, and in some cases you may find that you still have two interviews. But don't get alarmed if you have one. It's because we've adapted the process to make sure we can make the interview work for an online process. Just to kind of emphasize again, interviews are predominantly academic and subject focused, and I'll be telling a little bit more about that later on in this talk. and you will be interviewed by an academic, either a fellow at this college or a faculty member from the department, which subject you've applied to. My advice to anyone who comes for an interview is we will, in most cases, be telling you who your interviewers are for your interviews, but don't focus too much on Googling and searching those interviewers. But the key thing is, at the interview, we want to see how teachable you are and how well you are sort of suited to the course. So to kind of summarize, what are we looking for in an interview? The key things we are focused on, hopefully Katrina can move on to the next slide. Thank you very much. So what we are focused on is basically evaluating you in terms of your academic ability and potential. Those are the key things that we're interested in. We're looking at how suitable you are for the course. Do you meet the subject requirements? And, do you have a genuine subject interest? How motivated and enthusiastic are you about the course? So those are the sort of key things we're looking for when we are evaluating applications. If you are doing some sort of extracurricular activities and you're playing for the under-18 football team, as my classic example I always give, that's great, but it won't be formed as part of your application. Things like your school, your background are things that we do not take an interest in. We are purely interested in your academic ability and potential, and those are the sorts of things we're looking for when we are evaluating applications. So next, what I'd like to do is to do a sort of a poll. And the question that I'd like to pose to everyone who's joined this webinar is, how prepared are you feeling for your interview? So there's going to be a poll posted up here, and I'd like everyone to give me a score between 1 to 5, 5 being saying you are very well prepared, and 1 being that you're not feeling too sure about this. So if anyone could fill that out, that would be great. All right. Okay, I can't see the polls being updated. Are they being updated, Katrina? Oh, poll seems to have disappeared. Oh, excellent. Okay. So host is sharing the poll results. So you can see from the results here, a majority of you are sitting around the 3, which is sort of sitting on the fence, not feeling too sure about the interview process and about your preparation for interviews. Some of you are feeling quite nervous about this. I can see there's some scores for 1 and 2 here. And there is, about 26% of you who are 4. And there's some few people here that have given a score of 5. So the plan is, by the end of this webinar, we're going to get all those 1s, 2s, and 3s converted to 4s and 5s, hopefully. So I'm going to move on now, and I think we're going to hand over to Katrina, who's going to tell you a little bit more about how we're going to be conducting interviews online.
Brilliant, thank you so much, Cam. So nice to meet you all, everybody. My name is Katrina. I'm the School Liaison Officer at Downing, and I've been organising all the interviews via Zoom. So you should have been sent, when you were invited to this webinar, some instructions about how to use Zoom and log on during the day. And I'm just going to go over those now to make sure that everybody is clear on how to use it and what's sort of expected of you. So the first thing that you need to do is download the desktop app. Now, you don't have to have a Zoom account. It would be a good idea, or if you do have one, then please do use it. But if you don't actually have to sign up for an account. But what you do need to do is download the desktop app. So please go into your search engine and then go to Zoom and Zoom Client for Meetings. That's what they call it, and that's the one that you need, and that will download onto your laptop or tablet or PC, and that's what we would like you to use, because if you just use the web browser version, it doesn't give you all the features that this one does. So that's why that's really important. Then when you open the desktop app, you will see these 4 buttons, and we want you to click on the blue one that says join. Please do this at least 15 minutes before the start time, because we're going to be doing some tech checks with you and making sure that everything is ready, and it just gives us time in case something goes wrong, in case we can't hear you, anything like that. We just want to give you lots of time so that you're not late for your interview, and then you're not stressed about being late for your interview either. And so when you click this, it's going to ask for your meeting ID and passcode. So this is what that box looks like. And you're also able to change your name at this point. So it might say something like Catriona's iPad, for example, because that's the automatic name that it's come up with. So please make sure that you change this, especially if you're borrowing somebody's tablet or laptop, because it'll come up automatically with their name. So we need you to put your full name in and your UCAS ID as well. And if you've got an English name or a nickname or a name that is different to your first name and that you would like to be referred to, please do put this at the beginning in brackets. Then the interviewer will know to refer to you as that throughout the interview. But it means that the student ambassadors and myself, when we see you in the waiting room, we know you are the person that we're looking for their interview. And then after you have put the passcode and the meeting ID in, it's going to take you to the waiting room screen that looks like that. So you'll see it says Downing College interviews, and it'll just ask you to wait. And at this point, you don't need to do anything else. We know that you're there, and we will come and get you when we are ready for you. So at some point in those sort of at least 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes before, we will come and pull you out into the main meeting to do a tech check with you. So there'll be 2 student ambassadors, and what they'll do is they'll check that they can hear you and that they can see you and that you can see and hear them. And if you are going to be using a whiteboard, then they'll also check that your whiteboard is working and you've given the right permissions on your computer and all of that. And after they've done that, they will send you back into the waiting room until your interview time. So you will spend quite a bit of time in the waiting room, but that's okay. We know you're there and we can pull you in and out when we're ready. And when we are ready for you at your interview time, we will then bring you back into the main room, and a notice like this will appear. Except it won't say practice breakout room. It will have your subject there, and it might have an A or a B after it, and that's just because there are multiple rooms for the same subject. And if you see it, if you get sent that message and it's for the subject that you're not going to, please do let us know and say something. Don't just join, because it could be that we've made a mistake, or it could be that your interviewers have just moved into that room. So do let us know, and we'll make sure you definitely go into the right room. But this shouldn't really happen. And then your screen will seem like it's closed down, and there's something like that grey box there will appear, and you'll probably see your desktop background again. And that's okay, and it will just pop up with you in the breakout room or the interview room, and you'll see your 2 interviewers there, and they will take over and then begin your interview. So once you're in your interview, it'll go ahead as normal as if you were there in person. You may have an observer or a student ambassador or somebody there, and the interviewer will let you know that they are an observer. If you do have an observer, it is worth saying that they have no say in your application. They're not watching you, they're watching the interviewer. So please do not be worried about that, or be concerned that you can't see them and that their cameras are off. And so at the end of the meeting, please make sure that you click leave meeting, not leave room. So when you see at the bottom of your screen, it says leave room, so you click that, and then it gives you 2 options. It says, do you want to leave the meeting or do you want to leave the breakout room? And you want to leave the meeting. If you leave the breakout room, you'll come back into the main room where you'll see those 2 student ambassadors, and we don't want you to do that because we're very busy looking after other candidates and sending them to the right place. So please make sure that you do leave the meeting. If you have a second interview, please follow the same steps again, 20 minutes, 15 minutes before your second interview slot or reading time slot, whatever comes first. If you're using a whiteboard, this is for science subjects and math subjects, you might be asked to use one. You'll be using the whiteboard that's built in within Zoom. So it will appear on your menu bar. You can click whiteboard, then you can click draw, and then choose the kind of pen that you would like. And then you can also draw on the whiteboard that the interviewer shares as well. So you can use it like a big piece of paper. And you can use your mouse for that, you can use your finger, you can use a stylus. If you do have a tablet and a stylus, that would be recommended, but if you don't, you can use a mouse and just do it on your laptop. So please do check you have given the right permissions. If you are using a laptop especially, you do need to give the right permissions, so make sure you have used the whiteboard before your day of the interview, otherwise you're going to have to quit Zoom to go and do that. Okay, a couple of things to remember then. There should be nobody else in the room with you, just yourself and the interviewers. Make sure you tell people in your household when your interview is, so they can know to be quiet and be off any internet devices, so the internet connection is as strong as possible for you. If you're doing your interview in school, please make sure there's a note on the door so that any other teachers or students walking past know that you are in an interview and to be quiet and not to come in and disturb you. Any of the technology that you have should be turned off. So for example, your mobile phone, anything that you're not using for your interview, make sure it is switched off. And the final point is really important. You're not allowed to record your interview in any way. So if you do, your application will be voided and we won't be accepting or taking your application any further. So that is really important. So please do not record your interview in any way. Okay, so with your interview being online, there's a couple of things that you need to think about that you wouldn't normally think about. And so the first thing is background. Think about what's behind you. So you can see behind me, there is just a blank wall and a light. There's nothing distracting, there's nothing personal, or there's no kind of garish lights, anything like that. And it's just a plain background. So do try where you can to have a plain background. It's okay if it's not completely plain, that's not a problem. You know, if you've got a bookcase or something like that, that's absolutely fine. But we just don't want to be seeing into your personal space, and you don't want, you know, your laundry there, for example. Think about the lighting as well. Can you see clearly? Can you see can the interviewers see you? And don't be sat in front of a window, because all the interviewers are going to see is just the garish lights from behind you. So do make sure that you have thought about that and think about where you're sat. And also whereabouts you're positioning the camera. You know, are you sat too close? Are you sat too far away? Are you looking are they looking at your chin? Are they looking just at the top of your head? You know, think about where you are putting your camera, because that is really important, so that you can have a good conversation and discussion, and without the fact that it's online being a barrier to you. And the final one, it doesn't really change with online interview. The advice is the same. We want you to wear something that you're comfortable in and that you're not going to stand out in sort of like a negative way. But if you are in your school uniform, for example, that's absolutely fine. Whatever you're comfortable with wearing, we don't expect you to turn up in a suit. So please just wear whatever you feel comfortable wearing for your interview. And that's that on the online interview tips. Okay, so if you have any problems on the day, the first thing obviously is please don't panic. We are expecting there to be problems, but this is why we're doing things like this webinar, to try and minimize as many problems as possible. So if we are running behind schedule, please do not worry. This will not impact you at all. You will still have the full time that you've been allocated. We will find the time from elsewhere in the day. And we can let you know. So if you're in the waiting room and there is a subject that is behind, we can send a message saying this subject is running 10 minutes behind, for example. It's unlikely that that will happen or it will be that scale, but we will send you a message if there's a reason why you're going to be starting late. So please do not kind of worry about that, and just kind of stay where you are in the interview room. If something unexpected happens on the day, please just let us know as soon as you can. You know, if your internet crashes out, anything like that, just let us know as soon as you can. Our email is there on the screen. Just email us as soon as you can. We appreciate if your internet has gone down. It might be tricky, but do let us know as soon as you can. But also make sure that you answer any withheld numbers. So all of the admission staff are working from home. So we're using our own personal mobiles. We're not using our Cambridge numbers because we're not in the office. So if you get a missed call from a withheld number, or you see a withheld number and it's around the time of your interview or running up to your interview, it is likely that it's coming from us. So please do answer and at least listen to your voice messages as well, because we will be giving you some really important information. We will try and contact you via email first, of course, but if it's more urgent than that, we do have your numbers that you've given us and we will be calling you. So please do answer and talk to us and all of that. But if there are any problems on the day or any concerns that you have, the first thing to do is to email us and let us know and not to panic. Okay, so that is kind of all the advice from me. I'm now going to put up a quick sort of quiz or poll. And I want to just check that everyone's fully understood what I've been saying about Zoom, because it is the first time that it's being done on Zoom, and we want to make sure that everybody knows what's happening. So I'm going to put a poll up. There's 10 questions, and I'll give you 3 minutes. So don't spend too long on all of it, but do your best. Okay, 1 more minute, everybody. Okay, I think we will leave it there. Most people have had a chance to look at the questions. I'm going to go through them all now anyway, so please do not worry if you haven't got round to every question. Okay, so the first one was, what should you do before your interview? And the options were test my microphone and my camera out, speak to my teacher or household about a quiet place to sit, check I have all the technology I need, and double check the time and date of my interview. And the correct answer was the last one, which is all of the above. So please make sure you do all of those things before your interview. That's a really good thing to do, and it'll just mean you won't have any technology problems on the day. How early do you need to join before your interview start time? I'm pleased to see most of you got that right, which is brilliant. It's at least 15 minutes before. So if you can join any earlier, that is encouraged, but we would expect to see you at least 15 minutes before. Do you need to download the Zoom desktop app in advance? Yes, you do. So well done to the majority of you who got that right. So please do make sure you do that, because you don't want it to take sort of 10 minutes to download, and then that's eating into your time before you're supposed to start your interview. You need to change your name when joining Zoom. What should your name say? Again, most of you have got this right, which is brilliant. You need to have your first name, your last name, and your UCAS ID. So that is really important to have both of those. I will automatically be moved into the correct interview room. So this one is a little bit split, and it's sort of a trick question because you will automatically be taken out of the waiting room, but it will pop up on your screen an invite to the correct interview room, and you need to select it. So you need to accept the invitation that we put up. So sort of you will be moved automatically, but you still need to make sure that you do accept it, otherwise you won't be transferred. I can record my interview. I'm pleased to see that everybody said that was false. Yes, you cannot record your interview. What should you be conscious of with online interviews? What's in your background, the lighting, your camera location, and all technology being off? And the answer is all of the above. Thank you all for that. What should you do if you're running late or have a problem on the day? Most of you have got this right. Email the admissions team. The other options were call us or wait for someone to call you, which a few people have put. You can't call us because we're not in our office, so there isn't anybody in our office on our normal phone. And please don't just wait for us to call you. We will call you if you haven't turned up, but please don't wait for us to call you. After the interview has ended, which button do you press to leave? Brilliant that most of you have got this right. Leave the meeting, not leave the breakout room. Thank you. And if you have a second interview, what do you do to access it? Follow the instructions in the same way as you did before. So that's brilliant. Yeah, so for your second interview, you've left the meeting and just go back into Zoom at the right time, which could be in 10 minutes, it could be another day, or it could be a few hours later, just depending on your subject. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. If you're still kind of concerned or worried, tomorrow we are doing a technology drop-in check. So from 8:30 till 5:30, so all day tomorrow, we'll have student ambassadors who will be running the meeting as if it was for the interviews. So please join with the same meeting ID, the same passcode. Make sure you put your UCAS ID and your full name in the name description box, and you can test it out. So you can join, and then we'll take you from the waiting room into the main room. We'll speak to you for a little bit, check that you're happy with everything, and we can move you into a practice breakout room as well, so that you've been through the whole process, you know that it works, and you feel comfortable with where the different buttons are. Obviously we have quite a few people that we are interviewing, and it is a drop-in session, so we will work as fast as we can, but there will be times, I'm sure, where it is busier tomorrow. So please do not panic, I guess, if you are in the waiting room for quite some time. We will get to you. And you can always, if you've got somewhere else to be, you can always leave and come back and try again a bit later, but we will try and get through to you as well. Okay, I'm now going to hand back over to Cam, who's going to tell you a little bit more about what to expect when you're actually in the interview.
Thank you, Catriona. So as I mentioned already, the interviews this year, because they're taking place online, we've decided to schedule the interviews in such a way that some subjects will have 2 interviews, some may have just the 1 interview. Just to kind of emphasize that point again, depending on the subject, if you have 1 interview, they may be longer, slightly longer than your typical 25 minutes, which would be offered to candidates who've had 2 interviews. But the whole idea is to try and make the interview process as amenable as possible, so we can provide the candidates the best opportunity to perform at their interview for their subject. So as well as that provision, the other thing that you will notice at the interview is that there will be 2 academics who will be interviewing you in every interview that you do have. There will both be, the interviews will be subject specific. They'll be based around having a discussion about your academic work, and basically we'll be looking at probing you to see how much of an understanding you have of your subject area. So if I was to try and kind of describe a typical interview, you could consider it as like a one-to-one tutorial or a supervision that you're having in your interview. The idea is that we want to ask you questions and see how you can take information that you've already acquired through your studies at school and be able to apply it to that problem or the question that's being posed to you, and be able to have a discussion around that or present a solution to it. So if you were typically having a science interview, they may ask you to look at a problem and use what you've understood already through what you've learned at school in your A-level subjects or IB, and be able to use that to be able to solve and work through this problem. In an interview, you won't be presented with material which is familiar that you have come across before. The whole idea is to get you to look at a concept or a question that you have not come across before and see how you can go about working through the problem using information that you've already learnt about, or using the prompts or bits of advice or clues that have been given to you in the interview to try and piece the information together to work through the problems. So it's the key thing is to remember, whenever you have an interview, it's a discussion. We want to see how teachable you are. We want to see how capable you are to independently think through problems that have been presented to you. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. The type of questions, oops, there we go. Oh, here we go, right. The questions, so basically, like I've said before, these are there to kind of test your knowledge around the subject area. These questions are not trick questions. We don't expect candidates to be able to answer the question as fast as possible. That's not the whole idea. The whole idea is really to see what sort of journey you take in answering that question. So I would always advise candidates to think out loud if they're working through a problem. Also, if they're not sure about a question that's been posed to them, to ask for clarification. Don't hesitate to ask questions as well. The other thing is, during an interview, you might find that you are stopped and you're prompted by the interviewer, or you're asked to think about the problem from a different perspective. Don't get flustered by that, or don't get panicked by that. Don't think that you are answering the question in the wrong way. The interviewer may just particularly want you to think about the problem from a certain perspective. So that's quite common. That happens quite a lot in interviews. So don't get too flustered or stressed about that. The key thing is to try and think out loud and explain your concepts, explain your thought process as clearly as you can, and basically do ask questions as you go along if you're not sure about things. I mean, the obvious advice to give candidates is to try and be as calm as possible, and that's not easy when you're doing an interview, and it's going to be particularly more of a strange sort of experience doing this online, which many of you probably haven't done before as well. So yeah, we are aware of that, and we will be accommodating for that, but try and stay as calm as you can. The last thing I always tell candidates is to make sure that you don't over-analyze what's happened in your previous interview. A lot of candidates, after they had their first interview, walk out of the room and start thinking about the answers they've given to the questions, and start getting more and more stressed about the answers they've given, and maybe there could have been more they could have said, or they could have said something different. Don't overanalyze what's happened in your previous interview. I always say this to candidates 9 out of 10 times, if you've had a very tough interview, that means your interview has gone very well. So don't let that make you think, oh God, that was horrible. You know, reset, go in and give it your best when you do your second interview. So key things about how to prepare: read around your subject area. It's always useful to have a broader kind of context around your subject area, especially outside of your school curriculum. You know, develop your own opinions, interpretations. This really applies to students who are applying for the arts and humanities subjects. You know, we really want to be able to see how you are analysing concepts or arguments and basing your own opinions from what you've learned around the subject area. The other thing I'd always encourage applicants to do is talk with others about your subject. You know, make sure you practice having an interview with someone if you can do at your school, and make sure you sit down with your friends and family and try and explain some of those concepts around your subject area. One of the key things I always tell students when I'm teaching is the best way of learning is by teaching yourself. So by forcing yourself to explain certain concepts, you are then learning how to articulate your points more clearly and be able to communicate information about your understanding in that subject more clearly. So it's always good practice to do that. The other thing I'd always advise candidates is look back over your personal statement and any submitted work that you've sent in. At your interview, you may be asked around your submitted work, or maybe ask something from your personal statement, so make sure you are prepared for that. Practicing pre-interview tests, this won't be applicable anymore because all of you would have sat a pre-interview assessment or an at-interview assessment by now. And you know, the other thing I'd always advise candidates to do is look at our website and information online on the university website. There's lots of resources available on the university website and on the college website, which can provide you good advice about how to prepare for your interview. And Catriona, near the end of the talk, will be kind of signposting to these sorts of resources. Okay, so last thing, bit of advice: what can you do now? Key thing is to try and read around your subject area. I always advise candidates to spend time looking at resources which are available to give you a broader understanding and broader context around your subject area. Just to give you an example, you may be learning a lot of things in chemistry and physics at school, but if you were to read something like Nature, you can see how some of the concepts you've been learning about in school can be applied in real life applications, can be applied in sort of current sort of cutting edge technology and the research that's happening in those areas. So it's always good to read around your subject to build up a broader context around your subject area. So these are just some examples, and my advice would be, leading up to your interview, is to still continue reading around your subject area. All right, now Imogen has very kindly given up her time today. She's currently an undergraduate student at Downing College, so Imogen's going to join us for this part of the webinar, and we're going to hear from her about her experience of having an undergraduate interview. So Imogen, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're studying?
Yeah, so I'm in my 3rd year of doing medicine, so it's been 3 years since my interview at Downing.
Yeah. So how did you find your interview when you came for your interview for your admissions?
Surprisingly, I actually really enjoyed the interview itself. It wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. Actually, when I sat down with the academics, I felt quite at ease because it felt like they were really interested to hear my opinions and thoughts on the things that we were discussing. And actually you get quite relaxed into the learning environment quite quickly. So it doesn't feel too much like what you'd expect an interview to feel. Yeah, I kind of found the most important thing for me was to think out loud when I was asked a question. So if you're asked something you don't immediately know the answer, maybe you could just discuss some things that pop into your head, or you can ask the interviewer to clarify something. If there's a key word you don't understand, you could ask them about that. And actually actually, by the end of my interview, even though I'd started off not knowing much about this topic, by the end, I really had learned a lot, so that was good. In another section, I was taught a completely new concept that was building on A-level knowledge, and I wasn't required to know that specific concept before. The idea was for them to see whether they could teach it to me in the interview. So don't panic if they bring up something you've never heard of, because they probably want to see how you can learn that in kind of a supervision environment. And just to say, you might get some very simple questions wrong and kick yourself about it. I definitely got some very simple questions wrong at the beginning. But as long as you can kind of accept kind of criticism and then work to understand why you got the answer wrong, then it's not a big deal at all.
So was it how you expected it to go?
Yeah, it was a lot less scary than I expected. And I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected. And I found that actually I was a lot calmer and more confident than I thought I would be before. So you might surprise yourself with how you perform.
And so what sort of preparation did you do in anticipation of your interview?
Yeah, so the main thing that I did was just read through my A-level content, make sure that I was really familiar with all of that, because that's like the starting point of most of the interviews. And then I refreshed my knowledge of the wider reading I'd done for my personal statement. So anything that I'd mentioned there, I made sure to go back and read through the wider reading in case that came up. I also practiced speaking to my family and friends and just explaining things to them, as has already been said. And then specifically this year, I would say it'd be a good idea maybe to practice calling a friend on Zoom, just get used to talking to someone, maybe get used to if there's a slight delay or something, just get used to how it is, because your confidence will definitely improve the more that you use the virtual system. And I'll just finish a bit with my advice. Relax and focus on what you're doing. The best way for you to be able to perform well is to relax, because you can't learn when you're too stressed. As I've said, ask the question if you don't understand something. You won't be marked down, but if you don't say anything and you just sit there in silence, the interviewer won't know anything, so they won't know. They won't be able to see what talent you have. As was said, don't try to judge your performance, because you really have no idea. And even if you perform well, you might not know that. And finally, I would just say, try and enjoy it. It is a really good opportunity. And also, whatever the outcome is, it's a really fantastic achievement to be at this stage. So congratulations to everyone. And I wish you the best of luck for your interviews.
Brilliant. No, thank you so much, Imogen, and thank you for pointing out that's a very good bit of advice about practicing interviewing on Zoom. That's something which will be all new to many of you, and certainly some of us were interviewing for the first time online as well, so it's a new experience for us as well. So definitely spend some time getting yourself prepared. Good. So on that note, I'm going to pass back to Catriona now, who's going to tell you about how to use Zoom.
Yeah, great. So I've just got a few videos to point out to you. So the university have created a guide to online interviews for using Zoom. So please do go and watch it. It's only a couple of minutes long, so it'll just go into a few more details, and it's just quite helpful to actually physically watch somebody going through it as well. And so that's available on the university website. There is, of course, this video, which you may have seen already, the example interviews. This is a really good one to watch because it's mock interviews, and you can see exactly the sort of questions they ask, and all the students you see in the video were successful in their applications. In the summer, we did an interview workshop as part of our Year 12 day. Some of you may have attended that. The video is online on YouTube from that workshop. So you'll hear from Cam in more detail about interviews and kind of what's expected and the things we've kind of done an overview of today. There's also 8 student ambassadors who share their experiences at interview and also advice for interview as well for different subjects. So please do go and check those out. The university also have a preparing for interview video which was created a few years ago. So it is about in-person interviews, but there are a couple of good tips within it, so it'd be worth having a watch. We also a few years ago created some Meet the Interviewer videos, so they're for AIMS, English, HSPS and Natural Sciences. So if you are studying any of those subjects, it would be worth going and watching that video, which is on our YouTube channel. It's on our Discover Downing YouTube channel. Not the normal college one. So please do go and have a look at those and hear from the interviewers themselves about what they are looking for. And finally, the tips and advice from us. So start some supercurricular activities. If you haven't already, the things Cam was mentioning before, read around your subject and make sure you reread anything that you've sent to us, whether that be written work or your personal statement, anything in your application, because you could get asked about it. Give yourself plenty of time on the day. Make sure you've done a technology check. Join the drop-in session tomorrow and check it yourself as well, so that that's not a concern, and then you're not worried about being late and adding any other stress or pressure on yourself. As Cam already mentioned, if you're being prompted, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. They could be just more, it's more of a challenge to you. So please don't be thrown by that. And also don't feel obliged to ask us any questions at the end. You don't have to think of something to ask us. It's not a job interview. So if you don't have any questions, that's absolutely fine. And as Cam and Imogen have both said, make sure you are explaining your thinking and thinking out loud, because the interviewers don't know what is going on in your head. So please let them know and tell them, you know, your workings out and how you're getting to that conclusion and that opinion. So do make sure you are explaining your thinking, and you'll do much better if you get used to doing that. So a quick poll then to finish. I'm going to put it up on the screen now. There are 2 questions on this one, just seeing how prepared you're now feeling for your webinar after today, for your interview after today's webinar. Brilliant, thank you. Most people have voted, so I'm going to leave it there. So it's really great to see that the majority of people, and I think everybody, has probably gone up, which is brilliant. I'm really happy to see that. And that, again, 90% of you feel more prepared for your interview, which is the whole point of running this session. So that's brilliant to see that you are feeling more prepared. And we're now going to move on to some questions. So Cam and Imogen will be answering some of the questions that you have been putting in the Q&A box. We'll do our best, but we're definitely not going to get through to them all, as there are a lot of questions already. Some of you have already seen, but you can upvote a question. So if you have a look in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, have a look at questions that other people have asked, and please do upvote them if you would like them to be asked, and then it will come to the top of my screen and I'm more likely to ask it. Okay, brilliant. So let's begin. The first question, Cam, is, have more or less interviews been offered this year due to doing them virtually, or has it been the same?
No, the number of interviews that we offer, so basically in proportion to the applicant numbers, is pretty much the same. So there hasn't been much change. our selection process has been the same as it has been for previous years. Nothing has been affected in that sense. We have tried to stick to our admissions process as closely as possible to what we normally do in admissions rounds. And the only difference is that due to the pandemic, we've had to do all the assessments online and do all the interviews online. But apart from that, everything else is the same.
Brilliant. How do we know if we're going to receive a document for pre-reading before the interview? And that was specifically for law. But
thank you very much for that question. That's a very good question. There are some subjects which would require you to do pre-reading. If you have a subject which has pre-reading, it will be included in your invitation to your interview. What we are doing is arranging for a breakout space for candidates to go to do their pre-reading before their interview, and that will be arranged on the day. So you'll be told when to turn up for your interview. As long as you turn up before that time, at least 15 minutes before that time, everything else will be organized and you will be guided and chaperoned through the process while you're online. And hopefully tomorrow, when you get to come and participate in the drop-in session, you'll see how the Zoom interface will be set up and how you'll be moved from a waiting room into a breakout space.
Great, thank you. When will they find out their interview dates and times?
So this, I thank you again for posting this question. This is something which I need to start by. And I saw there was another question which sort of said, do we need to be given at least 1 week's notice? I need to apologize to applicants. The invitations for interviews have been slightly delayed this year. And that's mainly because we have been working very hard to try and make sure that all the right resources are in place to try and support the interviews to take place remotely. Invitation letters are going out. As we speak, there should be emails being sent out right now. Most of the subjects are going to be hearing by the end of today about their interview arrangements. I do not suspect there will be any subjects which will still be waiting to hear back about their interview arrangements tomorrow. If anything, the latest will be tomorrow morning that you'll hear. Interviews are starting as of Monday next week. English, who have been informed about their interviews, are starting on Friday, but all other interviews will be starting week commencing the 7th of December and will be taking place on the week of the 7th and on the week of the 14th throughout that period. So we are planning to get all the interviews done between the 7th and 18th of December. And again, I cannot apologize enough profusely about the fact that you have not been informed so far. And please be reassured, you will be hearing from us later this evening, latest tomorrow morning, with all your interview arrangements.
Great, thank you. A student here is asking about, if I'm interviewed by Downing only, can I still get put in the pool after interviews? So do you want to just explain how the pool works?
Right, so your application has been received by Downing College, so you will be interviewed by Downing College. If after your interview, we felt that your application was strong enough to be considered for an offer, we would either be looking to make you an offer ourselves. If we have, like for many subjects, we have lots of applicants and we only have a limited number of places. If we haven't got enough places to offer all the candidates that we feel are applicants which deserve a place at Cambridge, we would then be putting those applicants forward to the winter pool, where other colleges, if they are still looking to make up numbers for that subject, could then review those applications and look to make those an offer to those applicants. So it really depends on how every application is reviewed on an individual basis. And if we felt that the application was a very strong applicant and we weren't in a position to make them an offer, they would be put in the winter pool. All applicants won't have any information provided about the decision of the outcome of the application until after the winter pool's taken place. So by the middle of January, all the applicants will be hearing back from Downing College about whether their application has been successful and if they're going to have an offer from Downing College. And they may actually hear back from another college, in which case would it mean that they have been put in the winter pool and been successfully selected by another college. or the third outcome would be that your application has unfortunately been not successful. So, but you will be hearing by the middle of January.
Great, thank you. Quite a few people would like to know whether they can join Zoom on their laptop and also join on an iPad for the whiteboard feature.
Okay, so first of all, subjects which would require the use of the whiteboard, i.e. where candidates will be required to put things up on a whiteboard, are predominantly going to be the STEM subjects. So subjects like maths, computer science, engineering, medicine. These subjects may require you to use the whiteboard depending on the interviewer and the questions they pose and ask you. In most cases, what we're trying to do is use the whiteboard to be able to share information with you, but not particularly require candidates to have to use a whiteboard to write things back. But it's always a good idea to be able to get yourself, familiarize yourself with the whiteboard. So when you're explaining things, you might want to annotate them onto the whiteboard. Now, in that case, my advice would be would advise candidates to just use one device to log into the Zoom call and use it for the whiteboard. So if you have got an iPad, please do make good use of it. Use that to log into your Zoom call and use it to scribe and write on the whiteboard. I would advise against using a laptop or a desktop to log into the Zoom call and then your iPad separately to write on, because what we would have to do is invite you twice, once through your iPad and once through your desktop or laptop to the Zoom call, and things can get very complicated quite quickly because we're trying to administer and coordinate multiple interviews happening on the day. So if anyone is planning to use an iPad, then definitely I would advise you to log in through your iPad. If you are going to be using a stylus pad and a stylus and a pad, such as a Wacom board or a notepad and pen, a stylus pad, which is sort of like a pad that you can write on with a pen, that can be connected to your machine using a USB. And I will put a link on the chat from where you can purchase them. They're usually about £35 from Amazon. So definitely worth investing in one. My advice would be to try and use, if you've got an iPad, try and use that. If you don't, talk to your school, see if they can lend you one for your interview. And if you can't, then see if you can purchase a Wacom board. And if all those avenues aren't possible for you, get in touch with the college and we will try and see how we can help you. And worst scenario, if none of that can happen, make sure you have plenty of paper and lots of colored pens in front of you. And we have done this in the past. We would ask applicants to write on a piece of paper and then hold it up to the screen to show what your illustrations are. And that should be absolutely fine as well.
Brilliant, thank you. On the email that they were sent, the interview invitation letter, it asked the candidates to confirm receipt and attendance by emailing the admissions email. Does that mean that the students need to email that account, to say they've received it now? So
yeah, if they have received an invitation, it would be great if you can confirm that you received the email and to confirm that that time and date offered to you is appropriate and that you will be able to attend. We'd like to make sure that we can get everything confirmed. So please do get back to us as soon as possible.
Great. If they're only having one interview, how long will it be?
So that again depends on the subject. Typically, if they are having 2 interviews, they could be between 20 to 25 minutes long. If they're having 1 interview, they would typically be 30 minutes, or in some cases, 40 minutes long. It really depends on the subject. But that will all be explained to you at the time of the interview, once you come for your interview. And if there's anything unclear leading up to your interview time, please do get in touch with us and we'll try and clarify that information.
Brilliant. I've had quite a few emails about this question as well. So if a student hasn't covered a topic yet, but they indicated on their SAQ that it was something they would have covered before Christmas, should they tell us or should they tell their interviewers? What's the sort of thing to do there?
So the key thing is, in an interview, they will be asking you questions based on concepts, especially if it's a science interview. They'll be asking on concepts that you've not covered before. So they're not expecting you to know the answer. And the idea is, even if you haven't covered it in your subjects at school, they'll be able to provide you enough information there to be able to get you to be able to work through the problem or the question presented to you. But if you are still worried about your SAQ not reflecting the subjects that you've covered so far, do get in touch with the office and inform us, and we'll make sure that's noted on your file and passed on to the interviewers.
Brilliant, thank you. Can the candidates bring in a copy of their personal statement and a notepad and pen to the interview?
So I would definitely advise candidates to bring a notepad and pen. In fact, have multiple colored pens in front of you, because you may want to annotate something on a piece of paper and hold it up to explain to your interviewer. So definitely do that. Having a copy of your personal statement to hand is always a good idea, and also a copy of your submitted written work as well if you wanted to, because for certain subjects they may use your personal statement or your submitted work as part of a discussion in the interview. So having copies of that to hand is not a bad idea.
Brilliant, thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and we've got over 100 questions still left, so we're not going to be able to get around to all of them, I'm afraid. But thank you so much, Imogen and Cam, for your time this evening, and your tips and advice. And if you have a question that we haven't answered and you need to know the answer to it, then please email me. I'm going to put my email in the chat now for you all. So please email this instead of the admissions email, because that is obviously very busy at the minute if you've just got a question about interviews. Did you want to say something else, Cam?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I've posted a link to Amazon which has some information about the Wacom boards there. So if you are doing a STEM subject, you know, have a look to see if you could purchase one of those. If you do have any issues in getting hold of any kind of stylus and pad, get in touch with the college and we'll try and make sure that we can help you out with that as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, well, thank you all for joining us this evening, and good luck in your interviews, and we look forward to seeing you next week or the week after.
Yeah.
Bye.
Good luck, everyone. Good luck with your interviews. Thank you.
Good luck.